So looking forward, many retailers are still trapped by monolithic legacy systems, fragmented technical estates. I know we've seen ourselves personally, over 700 applications running in production for one particular retailer. Hugely complex app customizations, really complex IBM and clunky IBM implementations as well. But that's in retailers big and small, it's across the board. The temptation is huge, a risky rip and replace project. Tell us why an incremental approach to modernisation is almost always the better strategy.
When you treat modernisation like a project, you will always end up in a place where you're trying to define complete. And if you're trying to define complete on something that is so large and so long-ranging and so over such a big time frame, you will always fall at the mercy of change. The business will inevitably pivot in some direction. The technical landscape you're working with will change while you're doing that change. So you have to go back to autonomy. If you allow teams autonomy to make the right decision on modernizing the software that they're working with and have, you will always end up in a place where you're consistently asking the question, should we do this now or should we hold off? And that is, I guess, the point of incremental modernization and why it's the right idea. There is always a pressure to deliver new value. There's always a pressure to do something new that's revenue generating or value driving or efficiency driving. So instead of building an entire project around modernizing or getting off of an old monolith, building a culture where the question is always asked of, can we make this better now or can we leave it for another day? And answering that question honestly will lead to a better result in the long term. And it will lead to a good balance between modernizing your tech and understanding that there are some places where there are limitations. And those limitations maybe are actually acceptable and will always be acceptable to your business. But by treating it like a big project and just going, oh, actually, I've got to rip it all out, you're almost throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
These systems are expensive, they're big, they're monolithic, they're fragmented, they're painful, but they are there for a reason. And so almost stripping it back to what is the reason that every single system exists and building a culture of asking that question will result in a better technical estate that everybody understands, as opposed to trying to rip out SAP and replace it wholesale.
And I think there's a lot on leadership, really. So technical leaders to help simplify that landscape, right? So to simplify that architecture. And if you do need to build something custom, only build where it's going to deliver real value, right? And it's obviously composable architecture has been around for a long time. That's why that flexibility is there, because we can look at one thing that actually we could put that's going to allow us that scale, but we don't need to do the whole kind of, the whole broad spectrum of modernization in one go, right?
Yeah. I think if you're trying to do it all in one go, you will always end up looking at the cost. It will always cost lots of money, and it will be on top of costing lots of money to keep running your tech team and to keep running the organization, as opposed to baking that cost in to the everyday decision making of those teams, at which point partly you and your finance team don't feel it as much, but also you're constantly improving.
Yeah.
And actually that's where you want to get to, constant improvement, as opposed to accepting something subpar and going on forever until you do a big change and then maybe improve some things and maybe not.
And changes happen, right? So the business, like the economy, the market, macroeconomics, like things are going to change for that business. The longer you take to change your systems, the more you might be impacted, the more other things you're going to have to focus on, your more operational concerns might crop in. And that makes it harder then to justify this ongoing large kind of transformation, right?
Yeah. The longer you make that change happen for, or the longer that change is held off for, the more the world will change around you. And to something you've been talking about recently, if you have this and you're not in a space of incremental operational change, then things like AI-powered shopping experiences will completely pass you by.